P. Diddy is Illuminati. Before he was arrested, he broke his silence about terrifying secrets, occult rituals, and how the elite control the music industry and Hollywood. He revealed how tragedies that shocked the world may have been planned and confessed, that the price of fame goes beyond what anyone imagines. But why did he decide to speak out now? And is this the reason for his arrest? These revelations could change everything we know about the power behind celebrities. But is he safe, or will he pay the price for exposing the truth? If you like unraveling mysteries like this, subscribe to the channel to receive more videos every day. The story of P. Diddy, aka Sean Combs, began like that of many ambitious young men in Harlem. He wanted to escape poverty and make a name for himself. But something about Diddy's meteoric rise always seemed too fast, almost as if it were preordained. In just a few years, he went from a young college student with dreams of working in music to one of the most influential moguls in entertainment. However, behind his charismatic smile and resounding success, there would be a sinister connection with one of the most secretive and controversial groups in the world, the Illuminati. Sources close to Diddy, who preferred to remain anonymous, claim that his introduction to the Illuminati happened during a private party in the 1990s, hosted by a prominent music industry figure. This party, rumor has it, was not just a celebration. Gatherings like this were masked as social events, but in reality, they were a mixture of rituals and selections to identify potential circle members. Diddy, already demonstrating charisma and ability to attract crowds, would have been chosen for a special role. He is said to have undergone an initiation ritual which reportedly involved oaths of silence, the use of occult symbols, and a display of total obedience to the group. These ceremonies, held in isolated and luxurious locations, were marked by strange symbols and acts considered macabre by those who dared to describe them. Some claim that Diddy, after his initiation, began using these same symbols in music videos, fashion and events, hiding messages in plain sight. From that moment on, his career took off in an almost supernatural way. He launched artists like Notorious B.I.G., created a multi-million-dollar empire with Bad Boy Records, and became a cultural icon. But the price of his association with the Illuminati was not just financial. Insiders allege that he engaged in pacts that required unconditional loyalty and even acceptance that certain sacrifices might be necessary to maintain his position. These sacrifices are not specified, but are often associated with the idea that nothing is free in the occult world. There are also rumors that tragic events, such as the death of Notorious B.I.G., did not occur by chance, but as part of something much bigger. Many believe that Diddy knew more than he admitted, but was trapped in a web of secrets that he could never expose. These tragedies, however, only solidified his position of power, almost as if they were catalysts for his even greater rise. With Diddy now at the center of the global stage, his influence seemed limitless. He wasn't just a music mogul. It was a symbol of what the Illuminati could do for those willing to play the game. But with power came control, and Diddy would have learned that the moment he defied the system or tried to escape, the consequences would be devastating. As P. Diddy's career soared, those around him began to notice subtle but disturbing changes in his behavior. He seemed more reserved, often disappearing for long periods and returning with an almost obsessive intensity about his work. These periods of absence were not just for business, as he publicly said. Sources claim he was participating in exclusive meetings and secret rituals organized by the Illuminati, a necessary price to maintain his position at the top. Reports indicate that these rituals were more than simple meetings. Held in isolated mansions or historic sites with hidden meanings, such as castles in Europe or estates with Masonic symbols, these events involved macabre acts. An insider described a ceremony in which all participants were required to wear elaborate masks, symbolizing anonymity and submission. In such meetings, it was said that contracts were not signed with pen and paper, but in blood, symbolizing the absolute commitment of loyalty. One of the most unsettling stories involves a party in the early 2000s held under a full moon on a remote estate. During the event, participants were reportedly asked to participate in a collective ritual in which they vowed to sacrifice whatever was necessary for the greater good of the group. Diddy is said to have hesitated, but when pressed, swore an oath that he would never mention publicly. Insiders claim that, after this ceremony, he was involved in a series of decisions and events that benefited him financially, but with devastating moral consequences. Some theorists suggest that the death of Notorious B.I.G., one of the biggest stars launched by Diddy, was more than a tragedy in the world of hip-hop. Conspirators believe his death was part of a symbolic sacrifice, a cost imposed on Diddy to solidify his position among the global elite. These theories are fueled by suspicious coincidences and Diddy's behavior in the immediate aftermath of the incident, which included a rapid consolidation of power within the music industry. Diddy has also reportedly used his influence to insert hidden messages into music videos, performances, and even fashion. Analysis of classic videos like Mo Money Mo Problems reveals the use of symbolism such as triangles, eyes, and veiled references to control and power. Conspiracy theory experts point out that these images were not accidental, but rather a direct nod to the secret organization that Diddy now represented. However, this lifestyle took an emotional toll. Close friends reported that he seemed increasingly paranoid, fearing that any slip-up could cost him everything. He reportedly confessed to a colleague that he felt the invisible hands of something greater guiding every aspect of his life. But those same hands could destroy him if he dared to disobey. Diddy was now completely immersed in the system, trapped in a cycle of power, control, and obedience. He knew that although the benefits were immense, the ultimate cost could be his own soul. With his position cemented as one of the most influential figures in the entertainment industry, P. Diddy seemed untouchable. For decades, he navigated scandals, legal disputes, and personal tragedies without his career or fortune suffering significant damage. But according to theorists, this did not happen by chance. Diddy would be under the protection of a network of powerful Illuminati allies, whose main goal was to ensure that he remained a symbol of control and influence. The Pact of Silence demanded by the Illuminati was not just a symbolic formality. Members who reached the highest levels of power were required to maintain absolute secrecy about the group's operations. In return, they received protection from external threats, whether legal, financial, or even physical. Diddy is said to have benefited from this system on several occasions, such as legal disputes that were abruptly ended, charges that mysteriously disappeared, or million-dollar settlements that were never disclosed to the public. One of the most controversial cases involves a 1990s incident at a New York nightclub in which Diddy and his associates were accused of involvement in a shooting. Despite initial evidence pointing to the mogul's involvement, the case was quickly resolved, with Diddy emerging unharmed and the details remaining unclear. Theorists believe the Illuminati intervened, using their influence to manipulate witnesses, erase evidence, and ensure their pawn remained operational. This type of intervention was not rare. Sources suggest that Diddy had access to a network of lawyers, executives, and political figures who worked in sync to protect him. In return, he was to maintain secrecy about everything he knew and continue to promote the group's ideals and agenda. His business ventures, like the Sean John clothing brand and his partnership with Ciroc Vodka, were more than just profitable businesses. They were platforms to disseminate messages and consolidate their influence as a tool of the Illuminati. However, this protection came with an emotional and psychological price. Diddy began to feel more and more trapped. He knew that his career and his safety depended on his total loyalty to the group. He reportedly confided in close friends that he knew too much and that any attempt to leave or expose the Illuminati's secrets would be seen as betrayal, resulting in fatal consequences. This paranoia was not unfounded. Other elite members who challenged or exposed the group faced devastating consequences, from financial collapse to mysterious deaths. Diddy was aware that his position at the top was both a privilege and a sentence of constant vigilance. He was no longer just a businessman or artist. He was a piece in a much larger game, controlled by invisible hands. Despite his public charisma and the apparent glamour of his life, Diddy was increasingly aware that he had become a prisoner of the system that elevated him. He had the world at his feet, but at the cost of his freedom, his peace of mind, and possibly his soul. On the surface, it was just another party exclusive to the elite circle. The property, located in a remote location in the hills of Los Angeles, exuded luxury and power. Guests arrived in luxury cars, dressed in impeccable clothing and wearing elaborate masks, a protocol that was rumored to be common at Illuminati events. But for P. Diddy, this party would be a turning point, an event that would make him question his loyalties and set him on a collision course with the group that controlled his life. Reports describe the party as something out of the ordinary, even by the standards of secret Illuminati meetings. The room was decorated with occult symbols, pentagrams inlaid in marble, candles arranged in the shape of a triangle, and a large illuminated eye projected onto the ceiling, observing everyone present. Guests were asked to hand over their cell phones and any electronic devices at the entrance, ensuring that nothing that happened there would be recorded. Diddy, who was already used to these parties, was surprised by a feeling of discomfort when he noticed the somber atmosphere of the event. Unlike other meetings, this one seemed fraught with macabre intentions. The atmosphere became even heavier when a ceremony leader, dressed in a black robe and wearing a medallion with an eye inside a triangle, began to speak. He mentioned that that night would mark a new chapter for the group, a time of renewal and sacrifice. The highlight of the night was the performance of a ritual that, according to sources, left Diddy visibly shaken. In the center of the hall, an altar was set up, decorated with red candles and an ancient book, which many believed to be a grimoire used by the group. During the ritual, all participants were asked to renew their vows of loyalty, swearing total obedience and absolute commitment. However, something more disturbing happened. The leader mentioned that a symbolic sacrifice would be necessary to mark the beginning of this new era. Although the precise details of the sacrifice are unclear, anonymous witnesses claim the ritual involved an animal, which shocked Diddy. He was seen leaving the room momentarily, visibly distraught, but returned to avoid raising suspicion. According to reports, he began to internally question how far he was willing to go to maintain his position. What shook Diddy the most that night, however, was not just the ritual, but a conversation he allegedly overheard between two high-ranking members. They discussed how the group could deal with figures who became problematic or tried to rebel. The mention of complete erasure, a term he interpreted as physical elimination, sent him into a state of panic. He realized he was trapped in a dangerous game, where any attempt to leave could mean his destruction. After the party, Diddy reportedly confided in a close friend that something about that night made him rethink everything. "They're going too far," he was quoted as saying, but he also knew he couldn't just walk away. The party not only revealed the Illuminati's darkest secrets, but also reminded him that he was just a piece on a larger board, closely watched and controlled by forces he could not face alone. To the public, P. Diddy's arrest was presented as a consequence of his alleged illegal actions, but for those who follow theories involving the Illuminati, the story behind bars is much darker. Many believe his detention was not a coincidence, but rather a carefully planned ploy by the group to silence or punish him for questioning his loyalty. The events leading to Diddy's arrest were shrouded in controversy. He was accused of involvement in a criminal scheme, but the details of the case never seemed entirely clear. Missing documents, witnesses who changed their statements, and a confusing narrative about the incident raised suspicions that hidden forces could be manipulating behind the scenes. To theorists, this was a clear sign that the Illuminati was exerting its power, making an example of the once untouchable tycoon. Before his arrest, Diddy had already shown signs of emotional instability. Friends and associates reported that he seemed paranoid, frequently mentioning that he was being followed or monitored. He reportedly confided in one of his security guards that he feared imminent retaliation and that they would not allow him to continue if he dared to walk away. According to rumors, he had started to prepare for a possible public departure from the group, but he knew that this would practically be a death sentence. The arrest, for many, was a strategic move. By being isolated, Diddy lost control over his narrative and became vulnerable. He could not speak freely to the press, and any attempt to expose the Illuminati would be easily dismissed as the delusion or desperation of a man accused of crimes. Furthermore, the prison environment would be the ideal place for the group to send a clear message: no one is above the rules. Reports from inside the prison also further fueled the theories. Guards and other inmates stated that Diddy was frequently visited by lawyers and individuals who did not appear to be directly connected to his legal case. Some believe that these visits were actually meetings with representatives of the Illuminati, who were there to remind him of the consequences of his actions and ensure that he remained silent. Interestingly, during his detention, Diddy also began to change his behavior. He was seen praying frequently and mentioning that he was seeking spiritual redemption. For some, this was a sign that he was trying to free himself from something much bigger than the accusations against him. He even reportedly requested a meeting with the prison chaplain, where he reportedly confessed to sins that cannot be revealed, suggesting deep regret for his past actions. However, this search for redemption seemed to be in conflict with his reality. Diddy knew that any attempt to expose the Illuminati's secrets would not only put his life at risk, but also threaten everyone around him. He was trapped not just physically, but also in a cycle of fear, control, and manipulation. For theorists, Diddy's arrest was not just a matter of justice, but rather a calculated move to silence him before he could reveal the Illuminati's darkest secrets. The question that remains is, will he be able to get out of this cycle alive and with his soul intact? Inside prison, P. Diddy appeared to be facing not only the legal consequences of his actions, but also an intense spiritual and psychological battle. Deprived of the luxury and power that once defined his life, he began to seek answers in something that seemed stronger than the Illuminati's control: faith. Guards and inmates reported that Diddy, a man known for his unwavering confidence, now seemed consumed by remorse and fear. He spent hours sitting in silence with a distant expression, as if he were reliving the events that led him there. But it was during one of his visits to the prison chaplain that he reportedly confessed, "I was part of something much bigger, something that shouldn't exist." This phrase, recorded by anonymous sources, further fueled rumors of his connection to the Illuminati and his internal struggle to free himself. Diddy began attending religious services in prison, behavior that was initially seen as a strategy to gain sympathy. However, those who observed him closely claimed that his transformation seemed genuine. He reportedly asked for a Bible and was often seen reading passages relating to repentance and redemption. Guards reported that he repeatedly read Psalm 51, a prayer of repentance, mouthing the words as if begging for forgiveness. The most defining moment of his spiritual journey would have occurred when he requested to be baptized in prison. This decision surprised both staff and prisoners, as it was an act that symbolized not only a spiritual renewal, but also a rejection of their past. Some theorists believe that baptism was more than a gesture of faith. It was a cry for freedom against the control of the Illuminati, an attempt to purge himself of the alliances he had made. However, his search for redemption was not easy. Diddy reportedly confessed to his chaplain that he felt dark presences around him, especially at night. He mentioned disturbing dreams in which he was confronted by hooded figures, hidden symbols, and voices that told him he would never escape. These reports reinforced the belief that the Illuminati was still watching him closely, ensuring that he did not break the Pact of Silence. Diddy also began speaking out about his guilt toward the people he believed he had harmed during his rise. He mentioned colleagues and friends who were sacrificed, not necessarily in a literal sense, but as part of the power play he helped perpetuate. He reportedly said, "I was just a pawn. They used me, and I let them." Those words echoed like a lament for a life of choices that, although they had taken him to the top, had also destroyed him inside. For many, Diddy was trying to free himself not only from the physical chains of prison, but also the spiritual and psychological chains of the Illuminati. His search for faith and redemption seemed to be the only way to face the demons that haunted him. As P. Diddy continued his journey of repentance inside prison, he began to open up about the darkest secrets in his life. Some of these confessions were made to the chaplain in moments of spiritual search, while others came in private conversations with trusted prisoners. These accounts, shared anonymously, paint a disturbing picture about his connection to the Illuminati and what he claimed to have witnessed. Diddy reportedly described an intricate network of power and control operated by high-ranking members of the global elite. He stated that the Illuminati was more than a secret organization. It was a structured system to manipulate the music industry, cinema, and even politics. They control everything, and you only realize that when you're already trapped in the web, he was quoted as saying. Among his most shocking confessions, Diddy mentioned secret meetings held in isolated locations, where important decisions were made about which artists would be promoted and which would be erased. He stated that the rituals he witnessed were not just symbolic, but involved acts that tested the loyalty of the participants, such as oaths taken and pacts that promised power in exchange for total submission. "You give something of yourself to gain everything," he was quoted as saying, with an expression of regret. One of the most disturbing stories involved an event in which he was forced to attend a purification ritual. According to him, the ritual involved a symbolic sacrifice accompanied by chants and the recitation of ancient texts. "That night I realized it was no longer a choice. I was in and there was no way out," he reportedly confessed to the chaplain. He described the event as the moment he began to realize the real price of his loyalty. Diddy also reportedly mentioned the Illuminati's use of psychological manipulation. He stated that the group used veiled threats to ensure the silence of its members. "They don't have to touch you. They just make you believe that they can destroy everything you love, and that's enough." According to him, this feeling of constant surveillance led him to a state of paranoia that he carried even before his arrest. But the confessions didn't stop there. Diddy revealed that the Illuminati not only controlled the living, but also manipulated the legacies of deceased figures. He stated that artists who tried to expose the group or rebel had their deaths covered up as accidents or common crimes. He cited specific cases that he declined to name directly, but insinuated that some of music's biggest tragedies were linked to the group. These revelations, if true, put Diddy in an extremely dangerous position. He was breaking the Pact of Silence, even if indirectly, and he knew that this could have serious consequences. He reportedly told a trusted inmate, "If something happens to me, know that they did it. They don't let anyone get out alive." Despite the constant fear, Diddy seemed determined to share his truth, even if it was only with a few people. He reportedly told the chaplain, "If my story can save someone from making the same mistake, it will have been worth it." For theorists, these confessions are proof that Diddy was trying to redeem himself from his past, even though he knew it put him at risk. P. Diddy knew that his fight against the Illuminati system would not be easy, and that his life was at constant risk. However, before a critical moment in his trial, he reportedly wrote a letter that could shake the foundations of the secret elite. This letter, never officially sent, was mysteriously leaked, and its contents brought disturbing revelations that aroused curiosity and fear in equal measure. The letter, addressed to whom it may concern, began with a tone of regret. Diddy described how his quest for fame and fortune led him to make choices that he now saw as morally unacceptable. "I wanted to be king of the world," he wrote, "but the price I paid was my soul." He confessed that from the first moments of his meteoric rise, he realized that he was not in control of his own life. "They opened doors for me, but always with the condition that I never question who was on the other side." At the heart of the letter, Diddy made allegations that would shock anyone who read them. He described meetings where global decisions were made, not just about the entertainment industry, but also about politics, economics, and social control. He stated that the Illuminati used music and pop culture as tools to manipulate the masses, implementing subliminal messages and influencing behavior. "What you hear in the songs is not by chance. Every word, every beat has a purpose." Diddy also mentioned the rituals he witnessed, confirming details he had previously shared in prison confessions. He described symbols, chants, and acts that he said were intended to create a spiritual bond between members and the group. He revealed that over the years he tried to distance himself, but was constantly reminded that his life and career depended on his submission. "They made me rich, but they took away my freedom. I don't even own my own name." The most shocking part of the letter was when Diddy insinuated that some of entertainment's biggest tragedies were not accidents, but rather calculated moves to protect the interests of the Illuminati. He said prominent figures who tried to challenge the group or expose its secrets paid with their lives. "If you're not willing to play the game, they make sure you're not on the board anymore." At the end of the letter, Diddy expressed a mixture of regret and defiance. He asked for forgiveness for his past actions, but also left a clear message. "No matter what happens to me, the truth will come out. They can control the world, but they cannot control the truth." These words, according to theories, were interpreted as a warning that he knew his life was at risk, but was willing to fight to expose the Illuminati's secrets. After the letter was released, the climate surrounding Diddy's trial changed drastically. Some believed that the letter should never have reached the public and that it was leaked by someone within the prison or judicial system who was sympathetic to their cause. Others argue that the leak was planned by the Illuminati itself as a way to discredit him and paint him as a desperate man trying to escape justice. What really happened to Diddy after this letter was released is still subject to speculation. To his followers, he became a tragic figure, a man who tried to expose the truth but was crushed by the same system that elevated him. For Illuminati theorists, their story is a grim reminder of the price of power and the consequences of challenging those who grant it.